This message comes from Sony Pictures Classics. How do three friends who dream big stay old friends? Merrily We Roll Along from Stephen Sondheim and Maria Friedman, starring Jonathan Groff, Daniel Radcliffe, and Lindsay Mendez. Only in theaters starting December 5th.
So what happened to Woke 1.0?
I tend to think that Woke 1.0 was murdered by the pandemic.
I am not convinced we've exited Woke 1.0. I mean, there are still a variety of issues that you basically cannot touch with a 10-foot pole.
Target sales have plummeted after rolling back DEI policies. The Red Scare podcast faced backlash after interviewing Hitler-loving conservative pundit Nick Fuentes. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani was elected mayor of New York City. What do all of these have in common? Well, some people online are saying Woke 2.0 is the culprit. But is that really the case?
I mean, to me, I'm not so sold on the idea that there's been some death knell of wokeness, at least within these liberal circles.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. We're getting into it with Constance Grady, senior correspondent on the culture team at Vox.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Tyler Harper, staff writer at The Atlantic and co-host of the podcast Time to Say Goodbye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so just some background. As a term, woke has a long history in Black culture, dating back to the early 20th century. It meant being politically conscious and aware, but to be frank, it was also used a bit tongue-in-cheek. But in this conversation, we're digging into the way woke is used today as political shorthand for the left. So first off, before we get to Woke 2.0, how would you describe Woke 1.0?
I think we see the idea of wokeness start to mainstream circa roughly 2014 and the Ferguson protests.
Right. It became a rallying cry for the Black Lives Matter movement and digital activism circles.
This is when the idea becomes increasingly mainstream in white liberal circles that systemic racism is an animating force in American culture. And this language starts to become used increasingly often on social media and in center left to left digital outlets, which are at the time gathering a lot of online clout. That's really, I think, when we see this idea take off. And also when it becomes trendy enough for, a corporation to want to post a black square to Instagram after the death of George Floyd, or for Disney to want to include a token queer character in the live action Beauty and the Beast remake, right? These are not gestures that necessarily mean or do anything, but they get coded as woke because there's a sense that there is cultural capital to be had from aligning yourself with this ethos.
Interesting. I've noticed wokeness start to wane in the public in the last few years with right-wing media pundits on the rise, and the government and corporations have been rolling back their DEI programs and the repeal of Roe versus Wade. And of course, the win of Donald Trump, the second time he won the presidency in the past decade, just to put a point on that. So what happened to Woke 1.0?
That's a really good question. After lockdown, there's a pretty clear reactionary turn happening throughout US culture, particularly among young men. I think that for a lot of people, the idea of lockdowns get conflated with the sort of sense of censoriousness that has come to be associated with the left. And they all kind of become one thing in people's heads that has to be repudiated and pushed back so that we can all get back to the mythical normal time that came before.
I wonder how both of you feel about the perception of wokeness and how it affects consumer habits. We have some data that says that Target's brand perception has taken a hit since it rolled back its DEI policies. And Starbucks has long been riddled with accusations of union busting, and more recently, its perceived position on Israel and Gaza. But at the same time, if I think about the controversy surrounding Sydney Sweeney and the Good Genes ad for the American Eagle jeans, where it kind of seemed like they were doing a little bit of eugenics, I don't know that American Eagle was thinking about it that high level. I can't say that. I wasn't around for that. To me, it came off as completely sort of like thoughtless. But regardless, conservatives really picked up on the backlash to that ad. And Sydney Sweeney has become something of a conservative idol, a conservative darling. American Eagle stock went up after that ad ran and after the backlash. So I don't know. What do you both make of that?
I think one of the frustrations regular people have with what gets called wokeness, I'm going to use a piece of academic jargon, so I apologize, but what academics would call like the hermeneutics of suspicion, right? So this like approach to textual objects or cultural objects or whatever, where you're like skeptical of them, you think they have deep, secret, maybe nefarious meaning, right? And I think one of the things that people find really annoying is largely innocuous and maybe, yes, tone deaf or poorly judged statements, but are basically close read by pundits and activists, et cetera, to be like, oh no, this was actually, secret Nazi eugenic stuff, right? And I think one of the reasons, the Sydney Sweeney thing seemed to actually help the company in question is just because I think people are tired of that kind of approach to politics where we are close reading everyone's statements, every single message that comes before us and trying to figure out insist that there's some dog whistle hidden therein, right? I think especially at a moment when like really noxious elements of the far right and sort of the neo-Nazi right are ascending where, American culture is suffused with like more actual racism than I think I've encountered at any time since I've been alive, I don't know. I just don't think there's a lot of patience for it.
Yeah, I just want to pop in for a second. It sounds like what you're saying is that like the popularity of like nakedly racist and nakedly homophobic, nakedly transphobic, nakedly anti-Semitic messages is so high. I agree with you. It's higher than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. That you think that there may not even be necessity to code it into like this sort of denim ad. And also that the public may not even have the patience to want to decipher that if even that were to be the case.
Yeah, and I also just think have reacted pretty negatively against the sort of censoriousness or perceived censoriousness of the left that like everyone's speech is constantly scrutinized for accidental faux pas. And I do worry that there's a real sort of like boy who cried wolf thing that's been going on for a couple of years now. Progressives have called everything under the sun racist for the better part of a decade, if not longer, right? And now we have some real wolves in the henhouse, right? Like people like Nick Fuentes or the virulent anti-Semitism of Candace Owens, right? And I think people have been so desensitized to accusations of racism being thrown around all the time.
I don't know. I think that generally, like a lot of Americans' appetite for thinking about racism is so low. I think it's just always very low that I don't even think that a boy who cried wolf situation even really applies or could apply.
I mean, huge swaths of the population were really invested in anti-racism in 2020, 2021. Bestsellers, Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo are best. Like, there's a huge cultural investment in it.
I'm curious how many Americans perceive call-outs about racism as something they should be concerned about because it's racist, and how many think that it's something they should be concerned about because it's a social faux pas. I've had my fair share of conversations and meetings and polite reach outs and offers to buy coffee. People that I think really were just driven by sort of like white guilt.
Sure.
So to me, it's like, I don't know if people are always processing call outs about racism as like, oh, I should be concerned about this because racism is bad. They're like, oh, I should be concerned about this so people think I'm a good person and I can keep my job. You could kind of read it a few different ways.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about these sort of boycotts or quasi-boycotts is how much of our conversation about wokeism, so-called, or about our political beliefs, we end up having in the language of consumption, of being buyers of products. Of course, voting with your dollar and boycotting is a very time-honored political action, but it's as though we seem to have our voices limited in the ways that we can talk about these things as everyday people. And so we are limited to creating our identities as primarily consumers. We are what we purchase and what we express our values and how we think of ourselves in those ways. In a way, it speaks to one of the big issues that people had with Wokeness 1.0, which was that it was an opportunity for corporations to kind of gesture meaninglessly towards these fashionable social actions without actually having to make systemic change. It's individual solutions to a much bigger problem.
Coming up,
I think until folks on the left side of the aisle come up with a sort of successor to wokeness, we're going to be kind of in a cultural vacuum.
more from Constance and Tyler after the break.
This message comes from Dignity Memorial and Memphis Funeral Home, one of their nationwide providers. Funeral director Mike Perry shares why he believes that attention to even the smallest details about a loved one is important to the families he serves.
They can't take their loved one back home with them, but they can take those details, those memories back home with them and be able to share them for the rest of their lives. So that's why every detail is important.
Find a provider near you, like Memphis Funeral Home, at dignitymemorial.com. This message comes from BetterHelp. The holidays are a time of traditions, like making your grandmother's pudding recipe or watching that movie you've seen 1,000 times. Incorporating therapy into your life can help you take time for yourself during what can be a joyful but sometimes tough time of year. And by caring for yourself, you can show up more for the important moments. This December, start a new tradition by taking care of you. Visit betterhelp.com/NPR for 10% off. This message comes from Whole Foods Market. Make every holiday party shine with Whole Foods Market. Hosting, stock up on their Wallet Happy 365 brand with appetizers like walnut honey shrimp and breaded calamari. Plus, save now on crowd-pleasing bone-in spiral cut ham with no antibiotics ever. For dessert, check out limited-time treats like their holiday rum cake. With so many ways to save on festive spreads all month long, shop Whole Foods Market today. Terms apply.
I feel like we can't have this conversation without also thinking about dark woke. There have been stirrings around dark woke since the 2024 presidential election, kind of on the Democratic team. Some people, this idea of dark woke was kind of spearheaded by figures like Jasmine Crockett or Gavin Newsom. What is dark woke? And how do you think it fits in here?
Yeah, I think it's like a slightly more rough around the edges version of wokeness that is substantively committed to the same basic ideals around being pro-immigration, gender equality, so on and so forth, but shorn of some of the sort of like academies and, the kind of polish that you usually see from the sort of establishment set, So, and I also think an important part of it, right, is about fighting, right? Like that, no, we're actually going to like take the fight to the other side. I think, however you feel about Gavin Newsom, but he is somebody who has really been sort of aggressive, has been trolling the Trump administration, is willing to throw around some curse words and really posture a bit more than I think we've seen in the past.
I think one of the things that the popularity of dark woke reveals is how much politics right now in elite circles is about being good at posting. I think it shows how much of our discourse is about winning and posting in ways that'll get people excited to like your posts. It's kind of a weird moment in political conversation.
I'm glad we're kind of touching on sort of like the online political discourse of it all, because I think it's very key to how a lot of this is being like processed and perceived. To kind of bring things back to the present, I mean, I feel like post Mamdani's win, there's been a wave of memes and online discourse about, woke being back, woke 2.0 hitting harder than woke 1.0. Why do you think Mamdani's win, or even Mamdani as a political figure, has invigorated a new wave of this feeling for some people?
Yeah, so I think that something Mamdani has been able to accomplish very skillfully is show off his ability to court Trump's base of disaffected people who feel that there needs to be some kind of fundamental change in politics and who are really just really worried about their paychecks, without appearing to really disrespect either them or his progressive base, which includes people who really care about trans women in sports and in fact really want to make sure that they can continue to play sports. I think it's kind of the Democratic dream, someone who will be able to unite an ability to appeal to this sort of economic populist message that excites Trump supporters, and also maintain this ability to excite a Democratic base about an identity politics message?
I actually think it's because he's pretty squarely avoided identity politics. I mean, the people, the campaign that was doing identity politics in New York was not Mamdani. It was Andrew Cuomo, who was launching attacks about his alleged, quote unquote, anti-Semitism.
And Eric Adams. Do not forget that either.
And Erica Adams, right? That was, releasing these horrifically racist AI videos, just really grotesque forms of Islamophobia. So I think Mamdani pretty studiously avoided getting into any of these debates about identity. He was relentlessly focused on affordability.
I see where each of you is coming from. Like, Tyler, you're like, woke point one never ended. Maybe it's diminished, but it's not defeated. And Constance, I think also that your read that woke was basically murdered in 2020 is really sharp. But regardless of, how we feel about woke 1.0, is it alive? Is it dead? Is it like Tupac, where some of us are seeing him and some of us aren't? Like, I still think it's compelling. What does it say, or what does it mean that people, at least some people, are clamoring for that time to return?
Yeah, so to me, what this is talking about is that the problems that the word was created to describe still exist, and people still want a solution to those problems. Over the past 10, 15 years, the right was able to kind of destroy the word, but they haven't really done anything about the problems themselves.
Yeah, I think it can't be underestimated. Wokeness was extraordinarily popular across large swaths of the public. At its peak, a lot of us changed how we, speak and think, et cetera, and partly I think it's because it gave us a cultural rubric for how to live, right? Okay, this is how you talk. These are the things you put in your email signature. This is how you interact with other people. This is the kind of conversations you're supposed to have, right? This is the kind of questions you're supposed to be worried about. It gives you a clear etiquette, right? And in a secular society that is large and sprawling and very multicultural, right? It was something that, okay, this is straightforward and clear. I'm being told what to do and how to behave. And I think there's a real profound nostalgia for that common ethic, common language, common way of thinking, speaking, and talking. And I think until folks on the left side of the aisle come up with a sort of successor to wokeness, we're going to be kind of in a cultural vacuum, right? I am certainly no supporter of the right, but, one thing you can say for conservatives and for MAGA, it is very clear. These are our friends. These are our enemies. These are the words we use. These are the words we don't use, et cetera, right? It's kind of the mirror image. And I think one of the reasons, the left has been floundering a bit since wokeness has been in decline is that they don't really have a sweeping cultural vision for the country in the way that they did during the woke years. And until I think they, can put forward once again an image of like, if you're on the left, if you're a liberal, this is what a good life means, right? This is a good way to live, which they had in 2020. I think they're still going to be out in the sort of cultural wilderness a bit, and I think to the extent that they are ascendant again, I think it's going to be largely because of the collapse of MAGA than it is about having found a new vision to cling to. But I think that's what the fight is about right now within the Democratic Party and liberal institutions, right? Like, what is, if not woke 2.0, but like, what is the new cultural rubric we're going to rally behind, right? What is the new vision for a good life we're going to cling to?
I appreciate this conversation with both of you so much. Constance, Tyler, I have learned so much here. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Well, thank you.
That was senior correspondent for the culture team at Vox, Constance Grady, and Tyler Harper, staff writer at The Atlantic and co-host of the podcast, Time to Say Goodbye. So you all know I love hearing from you. And over the past few weeks, some of you have left the sweetest notes for me in the comments and reviews. One of y'all wrote, "This is my favorite podcast produced by NPR." Me too. Another wrote, "Thanks for enriching my life." You guys, I'm blushing. And if any of those comments resonate with you, I would love, love, love it if you rated and reviewed this show wherever you're listening. It helps other people find the show, and that means this community we're building will get even bigger. So join the team. Rate and review this show right now. And thank you. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Alexis Williams.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Schwab. Everyone has moments when they could have done better. Same goes for where you invest. Level up and invest smarter with Schwab. Get market insights, education, and human help when you need it.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. Starting at $15 a month, make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. $45 upfront payment for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. First 3 months only. See terms.
This message comes from KeyBank. You should never feel like you're leaving business decisions to chance. Try a banking relationship that helps you turn industry insight into industry advantage. Reimagine business as usual. KeyBank opens doors. Key.com/B2B.